All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. It's a Monday night. That means it's time for the Urban Conservative Podcast. Tonight, we got a special edition. We're going to be talking about what happened to Dee Dee Dawkins. Long series we're going to start, but the Urban Conservative Podcast starts right around now.
Welcome to the Urban Conservative Podcast, where we do not believe that avocado toast can save the planet or the world will end, because cars use gasoline. You won't hear that Wi-Fi is a basic human right, or that billionaires are secretly supervillains. Here, we do not believe that electric cars run on hopes and dreams. You also won't hear that anyone who disagrees with us is a fascist, or that socialism will make everyone rich. You won't be gender affirmed or offered any opportunity to share your preferred pronouns. If this causes you any discomfort, please rest assured that we couldn't possibly care less. For everyone else, thank you, and please stand by.
My fellow Americans, it's time for the Urban Conservative Podcast. This is without a doubt the best podcast on the internet. It's about to go down here on the Urban Conservative.
3, 2, 1.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, yours truly, Abdul Ali, along with my twin brother from the same mother, Raheem Soto. Bro, I know we got to jump into it, but we got to plug. Let's plug away, bro.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, like my brother said, we got to plug. We do a little bit more than podcasting around these parts. We actually roll our sleeves up and get involved. And in that tradition, I am proud to let you guys know I'm running for Suffolk County Legislative District 2. That is here in the beautiful town of Southampton and our sister town next door, East Hampton. I'm running to make sure we have a safe and affordable community that the next generation can stay here, live here, work here, and take care of their families here on the East End. The website is Soto for Suffolk. That is SOTO for FOR Suffolk, SUFFOLK. That's how you can support the campaign, make a donation, order a yard sign, get yourself all squared away over there, supporting what we do here at the Urban Conservative and for my campaign. So much appreciated to everybody that's donated already. I really appreciate all of the support. Obviously, I have an event coming up September 12th I'm excited about, but enough of that. Let's get into this episode because this is, these are the things why we do this show. These are the episodes that why we love doing this show and getting behind narratives and finding out about things, and investigating things. So Ali, can you begin the show?
I'm going to begin this show, but let me do something first, bro. Let me turn this music off. Let me do that because this is serious business. So, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's been more than 3 decades since 13-year-old Isis Denise Dee Dee Dawkins was found in the Henry Fork River in Catawba County, North Carolina. She was only 13 when she was killed and left in the water, and her case remains an unsolved mystery to this day. In recent months, the investigation has been overshadowed by some new controversy. New Brookford Police Chief Willie Armstrong, who became involved with the Dawkins case after it was reopened, is facing challenges during the case, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Yet, despite some allegations that have been made against the chief, he has been reinstated. His supporters are arguing that he is a dedicated public servant who has been unfairly targeted. Others believe his return threatens the credibility of an already fragile case. Meanwhile, the State Bureau of Investigation, the Sheriff's Office, and others are still probing in to Dee Dee's case. In this episode, folks, we're going to dig in. We're going to unpack the long shadow of the Dee Dee Dawkins case, the indictment and reinstatement of Chief Armstrong, and what this all means for a community that is waiting for justice after 33 years. That is a long time to wait to find out what's happening, what happened to your family member. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time on the Urban Conservative, please welcome Chief of Police Willie Anderson. Chief, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, man, absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Willie Armstrong, but you said Anderson. I was just giving you a hard time, but it's Armstrong.
It is Armstrong. I don't know where I got Anderson from.
It's
crazy.
No big deal, man.
Not enough coffee today, buddy.
Not enough at all. So, Chief Armstrong, we're going to dive right in this because before we talk the case proper, 33 years, what can you tell us about what this has been like from your perspective as the chief of police, what this means to the family that is dealing with this lack of justice for their family member?
Absolutely. This case has just kind of haunted our community for a long time. I mean, we're talking, like you said, it's 30 years. It's obviously the case is even older than I am. I became the police chief in Brookford in 2023, officially in January. Um, at that time, I reopened the case to try to see what I could figure out after the family kind of visited me. We officially reopened the investigation back in July. So July of 2023, roughly, is when we reopened the case, and it's just terrifying. I mean, it's one of those things that you you read it and try to wrap your mind around it. But like you said, she was a 13-year-old child. She's had no justice. Unfortunately, the family, I don't feel like, has had any closure, and
Mm.
it's haunted our community because there's been nobody to solve the case. And then in addition to that, it's just something that everybody had heard about. I had heard about the case a little bit growing up as a child, so I never thought in a million years, I'd be the guy to be opening the case back up to look into it. But here we are, and we've made some extremely good progress in the case, but it's just unfortunate what's really happened to this little girl.
Right. Wow, you want to jump in some? Right, you want to go ahead with your questions? I know you had a question that you wanted to ask, so
Oh yeah,
feel free.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Chief, what got you into law enforcement? Because it takes, in my opinion, a certain type of person to get involved. So I'm just curious. I know we're talking about the case, but you personally, what got you involved in law enforcement, and then what really inspired you to follow up on this case?
Well, in honesty, I didn't have a normal story, but I grew up in the system, foster care, group homes. I was homeless. My parents in and out of the prison system my entire life, and I just kind of wanted to change. It's one of those things where it's like you can be a product of your environment, right? A reproduction of your environment, or you can go out here and do something
Mm.
completely different. And so, from very early on, I knew I didn't want that life. I had saw what that had done for my parents and stuff, and that just wasn't what I wanted. So law enforcement was always something on my mind, and I had some good mentors along the way that I met, and just good people in my life that I tried to stay out of trouble and do the right thing. And I actually initially got into I became an EMT. I wanted to do something with
Mm.
emergency services. So as soon as I was 18, I was on an ambulance, and I did that for a few years. And then I got into law enforcement as early as you could go at 20 years old, and I've been doing that ever since. And it's just, I worked my way. I worked at originally started off at a place called Statesville Police Department here in North Carolina, and then went over to
Iredell
Lincoln,
County. Okay.
Iredell County. Yep, I did that, and really good experience, good place. Did that for a few years. Went to Lincoln County Sheriff's Department, and that's obviously on the a little bit farther away, about an hour or so from there. And
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually I was able to come home after working. I worked at the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, and where I work now, Brookford Police, part time. I was there, so I was working two jobs, and
Mm.
I did that. And then eventually, our chief retired, and that job position posted open, and there it was. I applied for it, and just so happened to get it. And it's been a amazing turnaround for me, to be I ended up becoming the youngest chief of police in the state of North Carolina, and one of the youngest chiefs in the country. And
See,
so
I need my sound effects machine, Ali. I keep telling you, I need my Jamaican noise sound effects
Blam,
machine.
blam,
Wham,
blam.
wham. Yeah, all of the
Yeah.
noises. Yeah, so
so
and now, like, what got you inspired to follow up on this case? Is it that it was like you said, something long term that's been in the community, and your position made you feel like you could do something about it, right? What was that inspiration there?
And so originally, when I opened the case up, I told the family, I said, let me look at it and just see if there's anything that's adding up. But I'm going to tell you guys, from the moment I opened this case up, I realized there was some major problems with the case. There was just a lot of things that just weren't adding up. For one in particular, it took me over a year before I was even able to get a report for the case. So the way Brookford is, we're a very small city, and so in the '90s, 1992 particularly, um, we used the sheriff's office to work a lot of investigations because it was a one person department. It's a very tiny mill town. That's just the way that it is, and I started originally reaching out to the sheriff's department to see what information, I could find out on the case after the family approached me, and there was nothing.
Mm.
I found one news article online, and that's what really got me intrigued. And then when I started asking questions for our local sheriff's department who would have worked the investigation, um, I knew that there was something there because obviously I had found the news article, but it was super hard to find anything. And what bothered me the most was seeing how this little girl just kind of vanished in the system. It was like she was nothing about her anywhere, and that's what got me more intrigued than anything. And just to hear the family story, you imagine 33 years, and if you're a parent, yeah, you don't get to know what happened to your child, and it was just so it's heartbreaking. The whole thing was just really really heartbreaking as I heard about it and heard the story firsthand
Mm.
from the family, and I was dedicated to find some more information out since then. So
Now, I want to be clear about something. We are talking about a 13-year-old girl. Um, 33 years ago, this is pre-internet, this is pre-cell phone, this is pre kind of modern air finger quote internet technology that we have now. Would you expect that there would still be stuff to find outside of a news article? Is that like the norm for case files that old to just be gone? Is that
So,
normal?
well, I'll give you an example. 15 minutes from us it was Asia Degree, right? Asia Degree is a
Hmm.
very well-known case of a young child who went missing, right? And she happened just a few years after Dee Dee, and they had a billboard in Brookford with her picture on it for many,
Mm.
many years, right? There's nothing about Dee Dee. That's a very unusual circumstance. There's nothing about Dee Dee
Mm.
there. You couldn't find. I found one article, and it wasn't even her own article. It was an article in relation to a man named Glenward Ed Chapman, who was exonerated after being put on death row for I think 14 years and wrongly prosecuted by local law enforcement. And that's what was really, kind of shocking. Her article, her name was mentioned in his article, and other than that, there was nothing. And so
Mm.
that's not normal. Not normal.
So Ali, real quick, I have to ask, when we say nothing, right? Are we saying there's just some notes, or are we saying nothing?
Well, originally there was nothing. It
Okay.
took them a while to even locate any kind of report. In fact, when I reached out to the local sheriff's office and told them, this is what I'm looking for, it took a while. And I think originally they provided me with less than 20 pages of content as if that
Wow.
was
Mm.
everything. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, this is all we've got on a 13-year-old that was homicide victim.
Mm. Rob, what else?
I thought
Because
you were going to you set that up like a segment, so I don't know if
no,
you
I
if you
didn't know.
want to.
So here's the one thing I want to touch on this, and I kind of before we cut to commercial, I kind of want to figure this out. It appears to me that when you have a 13-year-old, what is that? Not middle school, but that's just getting ready to go to high school.
Right.
Um, do we know what kind of young lady this was? Was she like popular in school? Like, what do we know about Dee Dee from what we were able to glean from what you've been able to find?
Yeah. Man, Dee Dee was a special, special child from what I've been able to learn about Dee Dee. Dee Dee she had a lot going for herself. So she was an extreme basketball athlete. In the Brown Pen is what they call it, was our recreation center. Towards our area, she until this day she has her own basketball tournament every year in her name. So
Wow.
her family says she was going to be a basketball. They figured she would have had a basketball scholarship. She was just extremely good at playing sports. They said she kind of was like a tomboy, but she could play about any sport you wanted. She was very friendly. From the impression that I've done in my investigation, she was very just a genuine girl, very trusting, very loving girl, and just had a lot. seemed like and when it had some comedy side of her too. I heard a lot of stories about that. So she seemed like she had a lot going for her.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking with Chief Willie Armstrong from Brookford, North Carolina, about the case of Dee Dee Dawkins. We are going to take a very, very quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about more about where this investigation is now and where we see things going. You're watching the Urban Conservative Podcast. Y'all don't move. We'll be right back. The Urban Conservative is sponsored in part by Gyra Family Farms, providing your family with fresh meat, eggs, poultry, produce, and so much more. Visit gyrafamilyfarm.net to find out about their summer farm camp program, events and classes, and their exclusive Farm Share membership, which will give you 15% off all your purchases. Again, visit gyrafamilyfarm.net to find out more. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're back on the Urban Conservative Podcast, special edition. We're talking with Chief Armstrong about the Dee Dee Dawkins case. Rob, where did you want to go next? I know you had a couple of other questions we wanted to get to with the Chief.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I know there's like limited things that could be said because there was some turmoil there. So I want to speak to that a little bit because conspiracy theories abound, endless conspiracy theories about cases like this. And unfortunately, cold cases like this become popular in the media. They have their attention and then it goes away and then it comes back. So my question is, what has been done so far from a strategic perspective, right? Is there a dedicated task force to this? Since the case has been reinstated, what can you speak to that's, kind of the protocol going forward? One, that would kind of help the family see that there's some progress. And two, just as the public and those interested in the story, if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So from when we opened the case back up in July 2023, I want to start off with just letting you know, I'm extremely disappointed in the investigation that was done originally. From what I was able to learn, I don't feel like this girl she never had a chance. She never had a chance. In fact, there was, talk from law enforcement mentioned that and this is family's information too that's out there now as well, so you can hear it. There is mentioned she was a prostitute, mentioned all kind of things that we just have found out just was not true at all. And I felt like she just kind of got left in a I'll tell you, I'm gonna give you a big red flag, and this is just the way it is. This is something that should have been a red flag 30 years ago, but I'm a straight shooter. Brookford in the 90s didn't even have any black people that lived there. So when a 13-year-old black child was found in Brookford in a river, it should have really sparked some kind of I would say more controversy than what it did. You couldn't even go through this area at this time. Unfortunately, that's just the way that city was. I mean, the demographics were if you were of color, and I've talked to many residents now to tell you, and they'll tell you that's just the way it was. You didn't come through there.
That's like one of them sundown town kind of get out of there by sundown things.
and they've made a lot of progress from then. But yeah, I mean, in that time frame, this was not an area that you would be at if you were a person of color. So that is the biggest thing. I'll tell you, going back into us, what we've done is I opened the case back up myself with a couple of other folks from my police department, and we started looking back into things. We were re-interviewing people, we were re-interviewing witnesses and people of interest and stuff like that in the case. And we just have been able to obtain a lot of information that some of it was obtained back then and not followed up on, things like that. But you'd be surprised how people will talk after 30 years goes by. There's some people that will say things now that wouldn't say things then. As far as what we've done is we've dedicated, a lot of manpower time just as an agency, just trying to reopen and interview people. And we made some really good progress in the case to the point where I'm very confident about could it have been prosecuted? Absolutely. And can we prosecute now? I think that we have a chance. Absolutely. I think that what happened is we're being derailed. and that's not an understatement. We're being derailed. if you know, we're being derailed from our original investigation. They're trying to take the focus off of Dee Dee Dawkins' case and what happened 30 years ago, and they're trying to stop us from being able to solve that now. You know, I'll give you an example, and I'll leave it here. Our local sheriff's department, the SBI, North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, and those are usually some pretty good folks. I think we're just dealing with a bad group of folks that we're dealing with down here. But bottom line is, they didn't have the little girl listed on the website. Okay, now I want you to understand this case is supposed to be a unsolved murder of a 13-year-old child. She's not listed anywhere. She's not listed on the website. They have cases on the sheriff's department website that was going back up until 3 weeks ago when the family called and complained and complained and complained. And finally, they put the little girl on both websites, I believe now, the SBI and the sheriff's department. But for 30 years, they have cases going back to the 80s, the 70s, and her case is not even listed on there. It's like they wanted her case to fade away. And you've got to ask yourself, this is not a conspiracy, but why would that be the case? Why would that be the case? You got a 13-year-old child, you've not listed her, she doesn't have a billboard, there's no news article, she's not listed as an open case on a website. In fact, I'll tell you, since reopening the case, they had closed the case with her. Her case was closed. And if it's closed, that means that, you know, what has happened there? The lead's been exhausted. Is the case solved, right? And her case was never solved, and this is a 13-year-old child. What happened? And so that, and I think the rest of it speaks for itself. I think we have been able to obtain and figure out exactly what's happened. And unfortunately, now we're fighting with a rough group of law enforcement and politicians.
So Chief Armstrong, one of the things we do on this platform is we're students, right? So I'm gonna ask my brother a question, and he didn't know I was gonna do this.
Okay.
Would it be weird for me to say that even though Brookford as a town has made progress, obviously they've got a young black, clear, minority chief, they've made some progress. Would it be weird that people who back in the early 90s who may have had a different racial opinion are covering for somebody they know? Like, would that be beyond the pale? Because it sounds really weird to
Okay,
me
yeah.
that
If you're gonna ask me that, I'm gonna be honest with you, and this is the reality of it, and Chief, this is nothing to do with you. I'm telling you right now. I feel that there has to be that because this doesn't seem like the normal protocol. This is I don't care what generation you put this in. The things that he just described aren't mistakes. Those aren't done by mistake. That's not an accident.
My spider senses were tingling, and I'm like,
well, you can make it black, white, whatever. And I'll say this before we go to commercial that and Ali, I'm pretty sure you'll agree with this. This is kind of why we do what we do here and why we get involved. I go to Walmart, I go to some of my grocery stores, and I see that wall of missing children, and I don't understand. Like I stand there and it just grows and grows and grows, and it never changes. And so it is. It's incumbent on us to look at these cases. It's incumbent on us especially as people that are aspiring to be in politics and in law enforcement, that we fight for justice for these people and get law enforcement the resources that they need. I don't understand living in a place where we're not going to make sure law enforcement has every single tool necessary to have a cold case file in cities, unfortunately, where we have cold cases. Or that our investigators, like who's hindering an investigation into a, unfortunately deceased and abused child? Like who's, so I'm sorry to make it that long, but I'll tell you, this is just so sad. It's heartbreaking. And, she deserves justice as all of the children do that have been through this and the families that have been through this terrible, terrible situation. It's absolutely, terrible, Ali.
Yeah.
It is. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take one more quick commercial break here on the podcast. Don't go anywhere. We've got a few more questions for Chief Armstrong. We're talking about the case of Dee Dee Dawkins here on the Urban Conservative Podcast. We'll be right back, y'all. Don't move. Carry Discount and Capital Appliance Repair is your trusted partner for appliance repairs and home services. When you're dealing with a malfunctioning refrigerator, dishwasher, washer, or dryer, we have the expertise to keep you running smooth. Visit us online or call 919-468-5860 today for Carry Discount and Capital Appliance Repair. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back on the Urban Conservative Podcast. We are kicking it with Chief. Now, let me ask a question, Chief, because there's a news report about you being removed and reinstated and all of that going on. And I mean, that had to be a shock. Like, here you are, groundbreaking, trailblazing as a young law enforcement officer to have to go through that. So can you speak to a little bit about what that experience is like? And, what was that like getting reinstated by the town of Brookford? And, just speak to that a little bit so that people could understand that.
I had to leave the job temporarily due to, it's just our standard protocol. Obviously you've been indicted on a charge here, but our city brought me back quickly because they realize and they have seen everything in this case, and this case is completely baseless. It's a baseless investigation. The facts are not true in the case, and the bottom line is they are obstructing justice for the 13-year-old child. And it's really scary when these people have that much power. But it tells you what? It tells you that we were too close to the case. We had figured out what was going on with the case, and obviously we were making too much headway. And I'm not going to be silent about that fact that we have done a really good job with what we've been able to learn about the case. More now the family knows than they ever knew, and part of that being from their own investigation, but part of it being because they've set themselves up and brought this to light. But the bottom line is they've obstructed this investigation majorly, and it was scary. You go from never being in trouble a day in your life to never been in trouble, man, and done everything right to try to not end up on that same side of the fence I was just telling you about that I grew up on, man. And I still end up getting indicted on a felony charge, man, for a bogus, baseless investigation that they have tried to criminalize and weaponize the system, man, against me. And it's scary. I mean, what do how do you, I don't know. I couldn't sleep the first night over it, man, or probably the first week, just because you're sitting there going, man, how did I end up here? I was at the
Wow.
peak of my career and doing well. I mean, I still got a lot of time and a lot more to learn. I'm always thinking you're growing, you're learning, but man, these people have really pulled a very dirty move here on this case.
So Ali, I gotta table this because he said that.
Yep.
It's something that I've learned about, and I'll consider, the situation you're in. It is, unfortunately, is somewhat a political situation, right? There's politics at play here, and so it's amazing that at a national level, we see this kind of weaponization. And what we tell people here is when they get involved and why we need good people involved civically is so these type of shenanigans don't happen. So that people with a moral compass, people that are going to do the right thing no matter what. If you make a mistake, you say, hey, look, I made a mistake. I mishandled the evidence. I did whatever. We need moral, righteous people and sound people in positions of leadership, and not just leadership, but in positions of representation. So, but it's sad that the weaponization of those levers of power, those institutions, especially in this circumstance. So how do you deal with that? Was there any point that you feel like your life was in danger, or it never got to that point? Or did you have that moment?
My life is in danger. There's no doubt about it. My life is in danger. When you'll take somebody's freedom for your own political gain and to stop whatever has happened here, and I won't hit on that too much because I think it's going to come out later on. But when you'll do something like that to somebody like me, a police chief, what else will you do, right? To the general public, or what else? How far will you go with this? But the thing is, what I keep telling people is, this little girl mattered. I want y'all to just hear me out on this. The indictment I got was for, originally they said I had tampered with or wiretapped this guy. Didn't happen. But then they said I tampered with evidence, right? Now, I want y'all to understand the reason that I met with the State Bureau of Investigation was to point out something important, like her evidence, her forensic physical evidence is gone. It is no longer, we cannot find it, been lost or destroyed. There's several news articles that's come out now because investigative reporters have went out and pursued this. And you tell me none of these people have been charged right in this case. But remember, they're so concerned about me that they're charging me with tampering of evidence because they said 5 minutes of gun smoke that we thought might not been there. That's what all this investigation's over with. But the people that's lost or destroyed her original evidence, we have no investigation and they don't care anything about it. I mean, it's speaking for itself. I don't have to say a word. It's just let people do their own research.
Yeah, I'm confused. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around the idea. I've never been in law enforcement, but I've been in the military. I served in the Army. So I've got, and I know it may be different worlds, Chief, but I'm trying to wrap my head around at what point do you give up trying to seek justice for somebody? Like, what do you got to have going on to where you target the guy trying to provide justice to a family? And that is something I think the public needs to understand. I'm sure you are grateful, and that speaks to the fact that the town, I don't know if y'all have councilmen or aldermen or what y'all call them in Brookford.
Yeah.
They had to have your back in this. So do you feel like the people in Brookford are supporting you in this?
Yes, sir, man. They have been so good to me. I mean, I want to give it to them because the city council has had my back. The mayor has had my back. The town attorney has had my back. And that's just not something you get all the time. But the bottom line is when you look at something and you know it's insane, like this does not make any sense to anyone, but they're going after me anyways and trying this. You don't have, I think God kind of prevails in these situations because, I mean, there's only so much you can do. But guys, this is something that should have never, ever went as far as what this has went. But it further proved, our problem, what was going on, that we've got a problem within the system, especially it started back 30 years ago. And I could tell you so many problems with that case 30 years ago. That it was botched. The case has been botched 30 years ago, and I'm just now aware of it. But instead of looking into that and giving me the proper assistance to help me solve the case, they need to shut me up and take me out, and it's scary. But yeah, to speak to your answer, the city council has been amazing. Town of Brookford's been amazing, and I think that as long as I'm just a transparent guy, and I've been very transparent on what's happened, and anybody that's looked at this has said this is bogus.
Ali,
Let me
real
ask
quick.
this. Hold on. Before you do that, Rod, I just got to ask this. Is there anybody in the sheriff's office, police department, local law enforcement within a reasonable distance of where this happened that is still involved in because this 33 years is a long time. Is anybody still in law enforcement that was involved with the case originally?
There are some people, and the thing is, if they're not, their kids are employed by these agencies. Their family members are now employed by these agencies, and obviously, that's almost the same thing, right? And it's not just the law enforcement agency. I want to make it clear, it's really not just the law enforcement agency. This is a problem that I have discovered. There are several agencies that I think that are involved. That is the Sheriff's Department, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, specifically the Hickory office, along with the Catawba County District Attorney's office, that are making that because these are the people that have put these chess pieces together to try to push me out of this investigation. There's a lot of moving parts that I haven't talked about, but these are the agencies, and I absolutely think that they played a factor then, and they absolutely play a factor right now.
So Ali, real quick, I wanted to just go back for 1 second because of something you guys said, and for those of our listeners who know, the urban part of this means understanding reality beyond all narratives. And I just want to say, Chief, that I'm glad you put that out there, because when we talk about, sometimes these issues get racialized and it turns into a black and white thing. So for you to give props to the city, knowing the history of that place, I just want to give a big shout out to the city out there too as well, because at the end of the day, communities should grow. They should change and begin to reflect and look like the people who live there and the representation there. So shouts out to all of you guys. And I'm just super glad you touched on that, because we want people to get involved civically. We want people to follow what's going on with your local police department, with your sheriff's department, not just the good. Don't just show up for the book bag giveaway. Find
Yeah.
out what's going on. Go to
You're
your
right.
auditor's office. Look at what's happening. See the incident reports. Get to know your officers. Request a ride along. Really
Yes.
form a relationship with that. So I had to touch on that, Ali. You can go ahead. I just found that to be a very, very important thing.
Look, so Chief, we're on the tail end here. I would really like you to talk to the audience and to say what people across North Carolina, across the country, what can we do to support you? What can people do? Obviously, we're going to do another episode. We're going to try to get some of her family members on to talk. But what can people do to support you? How do people find out what you've got going on up in Catawba County? Really just speak to how people can support you in the case and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. The biggest thing is we need some help. I mean, Catawba County really needs some help. We're dealing with a bunch of localized politicians that are shutting things down. The story's not getting where it needs to go because unfortunately it's being shut down locally. There are, like I've explained, there's some major problems with this case 30 years ago. There were major problems I've tried to make awareness to, and there's no proper procedures being followed in this case, then or now. Even the way that I've been investigated, I was investigated and charged by the current sitting sheriff's long-term employee that worked there, that's now an SBI agent. There's too many friendships around here. The SBI agent that charged me worked with our current sitting sheriff, who I'll just say is my political opponent, since 2012 at another police department. And then this guy becomes a sitting sheriff, and now this State Bureau investigator is working out of his office as a satellite office. And these are the people that have teamed up to charge me. And there's absolutely no proper protocol followed. I mean, I'm a police chief and I know how this works. Many times if we're going to request law enforcement especially for something, what they're going to quote this as is police corruption, they use a whole division called professional standards for the State Bureau investigation. Somebody that comes in from a different perspective, that doesn't have any ties to the community, so that no relationships are ruined. In this case,
Right.
none of that was followed. We're using local friends of a friend of a friend of a friend in everything that we're doing here. And therefore, I'm not getting a fair chance at this thing. So people have asked me, what can they do? It's get me some help from outside this area. It's talking to the Attorney General's office. It's talking to people that we need to get in here to really look at what's going on, because I have no doubt in my mind that if you come in here and look at what I've got going on, you'll see that this is a very crystal clear case of what's happening here. There's a lot of weaponization of the system and abuse of power going on down here.
Well, as much as the current North Carolina Attorney General talks about wanting justice for North Carolina and not to politicize it, but this is something that I think they really should be paying attention to, especially given the fact that and we will never, as long as we're talking about this story, forget that there is a family seeking justice for a
Yes.
13-year-old child. That we will
Yes.
not move away from. So, Chief, we really appreciate you coming on to talk about this case. We're obviously going to want to bring you back on as things develop. We know you've got a political situation going on, so we wish you the very best in that. Rod, did you have anything else before we cut out?
No, I really just wanted to say thank you for your service and thank you for for fighting for justice for this young lady and for her family. I just want to let the family know we here at the Urban Conservative will continue to keep them in our prayers. And again, we'll pray for justice for this family as well as for the safe return of many of the lost children that are out there. We hope they all get home safely. And again, Chief, thank you for your service. Thank you for putting your life on the line, as well as the rest of the members of your department and law enforcement across the country. And thank you to the families of those that are in law enforcement as well. So I'll leave it there.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching a very special edition of the Urban Conservative Podcast. We've been talking with Chief Willie Armstrong of Brookford, North Carolina, and Catawba County. What happened to Dee Dee Dawkins, episode 1. Y'all stay tuned. We're going to talk more about this case as things develop. Y'all have a peaceful and prosperous evening. We'll check y'all next Monday night live and direct here on the Urban Conservative Podcast. Peace, y'all.